Like
Uh,
we're live.
we are live. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. I am joined by a very special guest. I have Mike Lucas with me. Thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure, and thank you for having me. And thanks for
Ab-
the discussion today. It's been great speaking with you on the phone.
Absolutely. Well, let's get right into you and who you are and how you're involved in the industry first before we go into what's actually going on.
Okay, well, I'm an old fart officially for all your guys that are on this thing. You're probably all a third my age, so I apologize that I sound like an old guy, but I have a big passion for this industry. My first exposure to airsoft was actually back in 1994. I owned a paintball company back then, and we started to work with the original soft air guys out of Europe, importing airsoft stuff into Canada, and we had a heck of a lot of fun with it. But unfortunately, the Canadian government took a dim view after a couple of years and required us to stop importing that for a while. So we sort of got kicked out of the industry by the government, which is never the way you want it to happen. And I continued in the paintball industry until mid 2000s, and then I went and worked for people like Crossman. I was their product development head for 5 years.
Oh,
I
wow.
know that may upset some of your folks, but we made a lot better airsoft product while I was there than before when I was there.
Fair
We
enough.
really enjoyed it, and then I segued from there into working for Valken, and I was basically in charge of their entire supply chain. Originally, when I went there, they sold G&G product,
Yep.
and we eventually spun off and had made all of our own products. All that was because of all the relationships I've had with factories in Asia. I go to Asia when we were able to go. I'm starting to go again, usually 9 weeks a year, and I have been in literally every airsoft factory you have that it has ever existed.
That's
I,
so
I have
cool.
I have seen shit that people would just not believe. In the when airsoft got like China ran into problems with airsoft, the government clamped down on the manufacturing, and in about 2007, we were going from factory to factory, and we had to make all our visits at night because the government was looking for the factories. And you used to
Yeah.
go in the back of this great big factory, come into a room, and it was like a Mission Impossible thing. It's like a room with a bunch of girls working, and the guy goes to the back wall, knocks on it, and a big panel opens up, and there's this giant showroom full of airsoft stuff on the other side. It's absolutely wild.
That is
I
the
felt like a
coolest thing.
spy.
That
So
is
so
so cool.
so that's just some fun stuff to talk about. But I love airsoft, and in around 2009 or eight, I was involved with paintball with ASTM and
Mhm.
airsoft. The airsoft industry came to ASTM looking to start standards. It was a very heartfelt attempt on the industry's the manufacturers and the consumers in the industry. They wanted standards so that they could say that the quality of their products were great and that the safety was being looked after. So I helped get that established, and I ended up somehow becoming the chairman of that subcommittee throughout that after a
Oh
few
my.
years. So that's what I do now. My major thing with airsoft is helping with the standards, making informing people. I get calls from all sorts of people asking questions about airsoft all the time, and I'm more than happy to answer those. I do play occasionally, and I still do love the game. I'm not as fast as I was never fast. I'm a little too bulky to be fast, but I love playing, and I love developing product for the industry. I've since left Valken, and now I work in the public safety side of business. So I work for like the people that make the pepper ball stuff and all
Mhm.
that, the actual
Okay.
pepper ball company. So we
Okay.
support law enforcement providing less than lethal solutions so that less people get hurt, in those
Absolutely.
interactions with police. So I have fell into this industry like the paintball thing and air
Mhm.
guns and all that in '88, and I have not worked a day since in my mind.
That's
I can't
so
believe
great.
people
You're so
pay me to do
lucky.
what I do. So I love what I do, and I love this industry, and I want all the people listening to know that I'm not a I don't panic. I think things through pretty carefully.
Mhm.
And the reason I put out the notice I did yesterday night was I have a huge concern about some things that have happened with regarding the regulation and control of airsoft products, or potentially the control of airsoft products have changed since last year. And we need everybody's help right now to stand up and be counted. Okay.
Okay.
We need to make the government understand, and in particular the Consumer Product Safety Commission, which I'll refer to as the CPSC after this, know that there's a lot of people that care about this, and they're not going to get rolled over like a steamroller, which they sometimes do in their efforts. So here's what happened. I'm involved in the Airsoft Committee, the Paintball Committee, and I'm also involved in a thing called non-powder firearms. That's your traditional air guns.
Okay.
Everything that's been done in paintball and airsoft comes from that non-powder firearms thing because it's existed since I think it's late 1970s, and it has the standards that everybody has built everything else on. Okay, because they did all the work preliminarily. Now we've expanded what we've done to suit the industry better.
Hmm.
So, but they're the grandpas of the industry, and when we always stay closely connected. And because I worked in the airgun industry and the paintball and the airsoft, I'm sort of a unique guy. I can move between all three, and I
Hmm.
know everybody. I'm lucky. Know all these great guys that
You
are
are.
passionate about all these things, and it's fantastic to work with them. So every year at SHOT Show, that subcommittee meets to talk about what needs to be done in the standards, what needs to be updated, because everything has to be updated every so often. So at that meeting, the Consumer Product Safety Commission joined, which is not unusual. They some years they're there, some years they're not, but they joined virtually and advised us that there was a change in regulation coming regarding the management of this of category as far as the oversight. Now, up till from 1988 or so till now, the airsoft and what they call imitation firearms, which I hate that definition,
Me
okay, because
too.
it doesn't really apply to an airsoft gun in my mind because it's a purpose-built device for a reason. Um, so that was switching from Department of Commerce with the CPSC as a backup, but the Department of Commerce was giving it up, and CPSC was going to take it over because it was felt that they could handle it better. Now, that was a politically motivated thing by a bunch of senators out of New York who have a real dislike for air guns, airsoft, and anything that looks like a real gun that isn't a gun. They also hate guns too, but that's another whole different story.
Right.
So they had started something back in 2019 at the end of the year, and unfortunately, due to COVID, all of their efforts went to naught because nothing could happen during that time. And I think a lot of what we're seeing with this change is motivated by these people just beating on the CPSC to do something, to try and control this stuff better. And their idea of controlling it, believe me, is you'll be walking around with clown guns that look like something out of a horror movie, would be
Hmm.
what you will get, if you can get them at all. That's my bigger concern. So we were told, oh, this is going to happen, and it's going to be business as usual. They really actually told us that. We have a letter that says that. Okay. And what happened then on the 11th of this month, in May, excuse me, 11th of last month, May, there was a publication in the Federal Register, and I've sent you the link to this, so you can
Yep.
post it in this thing. And when you read this, the initial read, it doesn't read too bad. It's long, and I apologize. I asked your folks to read it. The most important and meat and potatoes part of it is under certification and effective date. So there's a couple ways the CPSC and government bodies can put legislation into effect now. There's the old way where you put it forward and it has to go through a lot of discussion and then it becomes the legislation. The new way, which is the one they like, is, oh, hey, we'll publish this in the Federal Register, which nobody regularly reads, except people like me and a few people at the ASTM who sent me this. It missed all my searches. ASTM sent me this and said, hey, Mike, you should read this. This is kind of
I'm
weird.
so glad you caught that.
Yeah. So am I. I wish we would have caught it a couple of weeks earlier. So we got told about it Monday, and we sent it. I sort of circled a bunch of people I know. I talked to the folks in the airgun, talked to a bunch in the airsoft, and a bunch in the paintball. Thankfully, the airgun guys have some legal resources, and what they did is they sent it to their lawyer, a guy named Steve Danikus, who is the wizard of everything to do with anything to do with this kind of stuff in the world. He is the lawyer to use.
Nice.
And he did an analysis, and he came back very concerned from a number of points. The biggest one was for airsoft in general because he feels that this changes completely the old regulation, and there's been no real discussion. The other problem is this legislation was made in 1985 and has never been updated.
Hmm.
Okay, it still references standards from 1985
Oh my goodness.
and hasn't that have never been updated. The Airgun standard in here is F589-85, which means when you are complying with this law, you are supposed to get a copy of that and read it and use that. Well, we republish that standard a minimum of every 5 years. So that means they're 12 versions behind from the current state of the art. Okay,
Jeez.
so you look at it and you go, what's going on? So we got this notice, and then it sort of resulted where we are today. But there's a little bit of a more backstory. So after the ASTM meeting in January, Ed and I know the CPSC folks well. We've worked with them over the years. They're good people normally. Um, and they reached out to both of us in March asking us some questions about other things, not air guns and airsoft, but about things like gel blasters and the new high impact Nerf, the higher velocity Nerf guns and things. So we had a meeting and we tried to explain all the products, and what they were for, and that airsoft, gel blasters, paintball, you have to look at that as sporting equipment. That's what it is. Okay, air guns, traditional air guns, which are non-powder firearms, which is under a whole different ASTM group. Those are just like real guns, except they don't use a primer to fire them. There's no difference. They're just as dangerous, and the air gun guys will tell you they are. It says you can die on the side of it. It tells you
Hmm.
not to sell it to anybody under 18. There's so many warnings on there to talk about that. And what we found with the discussion is they couldn't seem to understand the difference between all of this stuff. It was all just, oh, it's just an imitation firearm. Well, no, it's not. Okay, there's a lot more involved here than that. We aren't living in the 80s anymore. We're in a very complex society now where people play a lot of different things, and there's nothing wrong with it. Okay, I mean, there 99% of the people use the product the way it's meant to be. Okay, that's always the case. It's the 1% that's the problem, and the 1% are criminals who are robbing stores and stuff with airsoft guns or BB guns. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be able to own the product and use it the way that it's properly used. Okay. And the other side of it is if somebody's going to rob a store, I guarantee you they're going to rob the store, whether they use an airsoft gun or horribly go to a real gun or go to a knife or a club or whatever else it is, and somebody's going to get hurt. So it's a big concern, this whole thing. So we had our meeting with them in March. It went, we thought, fairly well. They came back to us with their understanding of what we had talked about, which was not very good. And we responded to that in April. And they said, okay, we're gonna read what you said, and we're gonna get back together and talk about this some more. We got a lot of work to do. And we said, yeah, we agree. You got a lot of work to do. We're here to help. We think you need to rewrite the standard this old standard needs to be written. You need to write in some new things. We need to look at all the standards that actually apply to the products, because the other thing is the CPSC mandate, if you read it, by government says that if there are standards bodies like ASTM writing standards for a product with industry, that is their first place they're supposed to go to work out regulation and compliance. It's a requirement for
Hmm.
them. So that, and then we get to this notice, like that I keep holding up here. So here's the crux of what this says, and it affects airsoft today more pointedly, though I am concerned about some of the language that it may spill over, and this may be just a start for them to establish a beachhead to make more waves in the industries. So what this requires is if this goes through on the fast track, which we have till June 12th to say, no, hey, you shouldn't use the fast track. You need to do some study on this and have some committee meetings, reach out to the people involved and talk through what really needs to happen here because you
Yep.
don't understand the
10,
industry.
10 days. We have 10 days to make
10
our
days,
voices
the
heard.
12th, that's it. You got till
Yeah.
the 12th. After that, whatever you say, it's too late. Okay. So we really need to put forward as much comment as we can. So Steve Danikus wrote a nice letter that I sent you a copy of.
Yep.
Okay. It's the perfect response to this. And what I would ask people to do is you can read it and choose to respond some other way. Try and remain very respectful. Try and not sound crazy. Okay.
Hmm.
Because we don't need that. We need a logical face forward. Hey, we're a bunch of athletes that are playing a sport here, and we want to save our sport, and we think you're shitting in our Cheerios. Sorry about that if I
Right.
made you an
No,
adult thing all of a
no,
sudden.
no, it's good.
But anyway, so that's what we need. So what I've sent you is the link that you can
Hmm.
read this publication in. Okay. Then on that same page is a button that says comment, and anyone can comment. Doesn't matter how old you are, guys, girls, anybody in between, whatever. You can comment freely. Okay. Because it doesn't ask your age. You need an email address, you need to put your name in it, and you need to say what you fall into. Consumer, you make the product, you service the product, whatever that is, your voice gets heard and it gets the same attention as anybody else's does. That's the other nice thing about this. And it becomes a numbers game for these guys. If there's 50 negatives, let's just let it go. If there's 100,000 negatives, that's going to change. They'll be scared at that point that we have brought that much light onto them. The other thing that came to light today later, and I'm going to add to the story now, is I sent an email to CPSC asking our contact about this and saying, hey, this is not what we talked about so far. What's going on? And she came back with an answer that basically said, oh, well, when Congress made this change in August of 2022, like last year, right? Like 4 months before they contacted us at the meeting to tell us they were making the change. Apparently, they claim that it was published that they could do this then without any commentary, without any publication.
Wow.
That's just not even allowed. We're still trying to dig through and find if there was a publication back then, but based on all the searching I do, I can't see anything. Okay. So we are concerned, as all three industries are concerned. This afternoon, I spoke with the head of the Airgun. There's an Airgun industry group.
ASA.
They sort of were on the fence about what they wanted to do, and this afternoon they agreed that we just need numbers. So they have committed as well to push out on their platforms that people should vote negatively again, like comment negatively. I will be reaching out to the paintball folks on over the weekend. I haven't done them yet. I know them well too. I'm going to send to all them and get as many of them involved in this as well. My goal is to have 100,000 negatives in 10 days. It's a big number.
It
I
is a
don't know
big
if we
number.
can do it, but I'm hopeful that I know the airsoft people are always passionate. They love this sport, and I encourage them to talk to all their friends. It takes you 5 minutes of your life to comment. Okay, very simple. Okay, there's no complication. It's easy. Please make a comment that you're not for this, that it should be looked at more closely. If you use the pre-done version we have, fine. If somebody else wants to take our version and simplify it, make it a little shorter and publish it out, I'd encourage you to do that. You can share. I sent you I think you've got the original email I sent, right?
I have it.
You can,
Yep.
if anybody asks for it, please send it to them the way it
Will
is.
do.
They may share it anywhere in the world as far as I'm concerned. And I
Okay.
am happy to help in any way over the next 10 days in this. I will make my time available,
What is a
whatever
good
it
way to
takes.
two questions? A good way to contact you.
The best way is email. I'd really prefer that. That makes it easier. So and I haven't, okay, again, been around a long time. My email address is mikelukas@hotmail.com. And
Okay.
you don't get an email address like that anymore.
Right?
So I had that one for a lot of years. So you can reach me there. You can also text me. Okay. Try not to call. If it's really important, I'll take calls. My cell number is 226 700 3392. Okay.
Okay.
Text me. I will get back to you. I promise. I answer every inquiry I get. Um, you can also get me through Facebook Messenger. I don't know if my Facebook account comes up with this, but you can get that. I think you can use that across. It'll cross pollinate across from YouTube
Okay.
to Facebook as well. But I'm available on there. Look me up. It's Mike Lucas on at Facebook. It's
Okay.
easy to find.
What?
I am a Canadian. Okay, so I'm overly polite too. So
Okay.
if I
Fair
say
enough.
a or something every once in a while, I apologize. But
Fair enough.
what? I'm sorry. I've taken a little longer than I thought I would, and I hope I covered it the way you wanted it because
Absolutely.
I think we've brought it down to a nice, easy to understand level. How else could I help you guys? What else
What
should I be doing? I guess.
Well, what is at stake? What exactly are they looking currently to potentially change? I know reading
Oh,
through
okay.
everything that I read through, I know I got questions from other people. I've got a few
Yeah.
other friends in the industry that were asking.
What the regulation really calls is first of all, it's very poorly defined as what is acceptable and what is not acceptable in the future. The
Okay.
second thing is the way they put it is airsoft guns basically require to have a general compliance certification for every air gun or every airsoft gun, and it has to be done by a third party laboratory before the product's shipped, made, or sold. So basically, and that would take place on the 26th of June, would be in effect. So the trouble is, because everything's so ill-defined, it isn't the CPSC that makes the determination or tries to interpret the rule. It's guys like Canada, like Border Protection, okay, like your customs guys. It's like policemen, okay, on the street trying to determine if, well, is this a legal thing and is it proper? Should it be here or should I just? It becomes a really squirrely, undefined thing that nobody knows the definition. And when nobody knows the definition, they always err on the side of caution because nobody wants to make a mistake. So commercially, it's a disaster for manufacturers, especially people that have product on the ocean. And the normal lead time for containers on the ocean, I'll tell you, is 90 days. So people have 3 months of product coming this way, right? And they all need certificates, which they have to get before they ship it. So how do you make even that work?
Hmm.
So it's just very what you could see is the supply of product drying up very fast or customs seizing product and holding it until they get clarification. So it's a supply issue for the long term, which could eventually choke the supply of product down to nothing but the cheapest, like kiddish toy like stuff as fast as they could implement it. That's what I see could happen.
Hmm. That's interesting. So the stuff that's on the shelves now, what could potentially happen? Everything that's out.
Well, the stuff on the shelves would depend on the local police more than anything else. In certain states where like New York and places like that, where they can go kind of crazy, or New Jersey, they could walk into a store and literally strip the shelves and tell them they can't sell it anymore. Prove that
That's
you've got a certificate, or stop selling it.
So the certificate would then come from the third party, correct? So this third party lab would issue a certificate based on the individual product, not necessarily airsoft in a whole. It would be each
No,
individual
it's
product.
every product has to be assessed every time it's made. So every batch, you have to pay somebody to certify, and the certification groups have to be approved by the CPSC.
Do they even exist yet? Does
Not that I
so
can find.
so if this passes, because they're fast tracking
Yeah,
from my understanding, they're fast tracking it. They don't really care. I mean, that could bring the entire industry to a screeching halt. I mean, I'm not trying
it
to.
could. Yeah, no, I'm not trying to be alarmist either. But if they did it as a black and white switch on the 26th, right now, there are people that I've talked to that said, "Well, what does this mean to all the product, the millions of dollars of product I have inbound?" Well, you're reading the law the same way I am. They can just basically the customs guys can say, "Where's your certificate?" If you don't have it, I'm sorry, you can't bring that in the country.
Oh my
Or
gosh.
yeah, it's a huge commercial risk to a lot of people. Now, it would be unusual for them to do that fast. They will take a time
Right.
to let it to peter in or to come
Hmm.
on. But the point is, this is because it's so poorly put together, this
Hmm.
legislation, and it's so old. it needs to be updated. They need to do they need to do their job correctly is what it
Yeah,
comes down to. They need to go back to square one, take what they've got, update it, get the inputs that they need, because that's what happened the last time this law was created. There was over a year of hearings on this. I know people, there are people in the industry that are still around, like a person, there's a young lady named Jessica Sparks who was a firearms lawyer and an advocate for paintball, and knew about airsoft and other things at that time. She was involved with this writing of this initial law, and it took them over a year, and she fought tooth and nail. She was a little tiger in this whole thing. Now
nice.
Jessica is still around, not as involved. She's getting older, and she's given up her legal practice these days. But she read through this right now and is doing an assessment for me as well, because we're just friends. We've known each other for a long time,
Okay.
and she has some concerns already about it. She's more concerned about why the changes have been made and why they're happening so fast. Because she looks at it from a political standpoint
Mhm.
more. Because she says it's 90% political, 10% about being good for the consumer. That's
Okay.
really the way this happens. So,
Now, I wasn't gonna read questions too much, but I saw someone did bring up a really good question.
sure.
What potentially could happen, and this is all hypothetical, of course,
Mhm.
to the airsoft replicas that people already own?
Now that's a good question, and I can't answer that for
I
sure.
figured.
Again,
Right.
this applies primarily to new product. However, okay, if they shut the industry down from one side, okay, selling anything that you own is going to be a problematic thing,
Right.
because it's the rules still apply to that. So that would become more a local policing issue if, let's say, you were playing at a field with a bunch of your buddies, or at a place that's just a private field that you use yourself. The
Mhm.
police could come in and take everything you've got, saying, "Hey, this stuff is illegal. See this law? Do you have some sort of thing that tells these things are approved and are compliant?" Because remember, all the data that comes in, all those compliance certificates are filed with the CPSC. So they have a log of all the product. So if the product isn't on the approved list, technically it's illegal,
Yeah,
right?
that's
And again, this is around this imitation firearms thing that everybody likes, replica firearms and things like
mhm.
that, which again doesn't apply to this product properly. It doesn't apply to paintball. It doesn't apply to airsoft. It does not apply to air guns. There's actually some interesting rhetoric coming from some of the discussions outside this from various government groups about, oh well, all these air guns that look like real guns, we should really call those replicas. They should be real air gun, like, and we should maybe make you apply the toy standards to that. That would be the other thing they could do, is try and force airsoft into toys.
that's what I was
And if they
afraid
do
of.
that, that's a disaster, because then basically nothing will shoot more than like a pop gun does now.
And then they
You
would
won't be able
obviously
to.
color the gun
Oh
certain,
yeah,
like, kinda like what they started
clown
doing.
guns,
Yeah.
for everybody, right?
So
They'll have you
potentially
wearing.
we're safe right now with the
We are
orange
today.
tip. Okay, so today
Yeah,
we're safe with just the orange tip, and the guns would look the same. We wouldn't be changing any of that stuff.
that's right. That's the.
However,
However, this whole thing leads down to that same issue, is that we went through some change. Like, again, I'm sorry to give you back history. In the airgun industry, when this thing came up in 2020 with the senators that were pressuring airgun to be
I
like
remember that. Yeah.
pressuring the Department of Justice, pressuring the Department of Commerce, and pressuring the CPSC. CPSC came to the meetings and said, "What's this all about?" And we go, "Well, we don't think these guys really understand the product." And we went through a long process of trying to come up with some solutions to make it more palatable for them. In the end, the only thing we really could come up with was to go to a more expanded warning about a thing called brandishing a gun in public, which
Mhm.
means If you're using your air gun, you usually are taking it to a range or taking it someplace you're going to shoot it. Okay. You're not running around the street with it, holding it and waving it in the air. Okay. That's called brandishing. You can scare people. People don't understand what's going on. People have a fear of guns sometimes. And you could also get shot at, which is not a good idea. So you have to store the product properly, understand what it is, and treat it with respect, just like you would a real firearm. Okay. So we created some new warnings and we put them into place. That's in place now. Both airsoft and paintball, because I'm involved with that, I went to those committees and we have duplicated that effort over there because
Mm,
that's the responsible thing to do. We want to be proactive because I know that the CPSC is out here with a bunch of senators fishing for something. I'm
gotcha.
gonna I'm gonna be ahead of them if I can. So we have the publication of the paintball has come through. The airsoft, we have one dissenting voter that I have to deal with, which will do that this week, and I'm sure he will withdraw and allow us to publish that change. So at that point, we're on equal footing with the airgun guys. We have met all the same requirements they have. We have good standards. We just need the CPSC to listen and sit down at the table and talk about it. And that's what we need your viewers to help us with.
Okay. Everybody that there's about 10 people in here. They've been dipping in and out, and they've been sharing this. So there's a lot of
Good,
people that are going to be sharing this. We're going to
good.
continue to spread the word. I know there's a few other guys that are going to be going on to podcasts and hopefully spread the word. But I really, really appreciate your time this evening. I really appreciate all your efforts. I had no idea that you were this involved with the industry. I love that. I played paintball from the time I was 10 years old, and I knew Greg Hastings and Bob
Oh,
Long
wow.
and
All
yeah,
the guys I've played and worked with and
yep,
have retired while I stay
yeah.
and work in this thing. I don't know.
I
I
know,
just
right?
like with my job too much. But
I
anyway,
I really appreciate you.
hey, no problem. And I thank you for your time tonight. I thank you for all your folks that are listening and for their interest. And
Hmm.
I'd ask them for their help. And as I said, reach out to me. I'll gladly help in any other way I can. I'm still trying to think through some more ways of getting the word out. We will get it out as much as we can. I want the CPSC to know that they need to take this a little more seriously than they are. Thanks a lot for
Absolutely.
the forum, and I appreciate it. Anything I can help you with in the future, you know where I am. Just reach out.
Thank you so much for your time. Have a great evening.
You too. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.